Or you can do like me, stay in the cage, or you finally take the key. Oh, damn, suddenly you're free to fly. It'll take you to the other side. Okay, my friend, you wanna cut me in? Well, I hate to tell you, but it just won't happen. So thanks, but no, I think I'm good to go. Cause I quite enjoy the life you say I'm trapped in. Now I admire you, and that'll show you do. You're onto something, really it's something. I live among the swells and we don't pick up peanut shells. I'll have to leave that up to you. Don't you know that I'm okay with this up, down, all I get to play? Cause I've got what I need and I don't wanna take the ride. I'm gonna need to see the other side, so go and do like you do. I'm good to do like me. Ain't in a cage, so I don't need to take the key. Oh, damn, can't you see I'm doing fine? I don't need to see the other side. Is this really how you like to spend your days? Whiskey, misery, and parties and play. If I were mixed up with you, I'd be the talk of the town. Disgraced and disowned, another one of the clowns. But you would finally live a little, finally laugh a little. Just let me give you the freedom to dream, and it'll wake you up and cure your aching. Take your walls and start them breaking. Now that's a deal that seems worth taking. But I guess I'll leave that up to you. Well, it's intriguing, but to go would cost me greatly. So what percentage of the show would I be taking? Fair enough, you'd want a piece of all the action. I'd give you 7, we could shake and make it happen. I wasn't born this morning, 18 would be just fine. Why not just go ahead and ask for nickels on the dime? 15, I'd do 8, 12, maybe 9, 10. Don't you wanna get away to a whole new part you gonna play? Cause I got what you need, so come with me and take the ride to the other side. So if you do like I do, so if you do like me, forget the cage, cause we know how to make the key. Oh, damn, suddenly we're free to fly. We're going to the other side. So if you do like I do, to the other side. So if you do like I do, to the other side. Good evening, Dominica. Welcome, welcome to the other side, right here on the big station Q95. Yes, I'm your host, Tanya Dickson, and as usual, I have with me my fellow co-hosts, hotelier Mr. Sam Raphael and a businessman, Mr. Kenny Green. And we have a special guest with us as well. Yes, a very special guest here to the Q95 audience. But let me just remind you guys that every Tuesday we're here from 6 to 7:30 p.m. and we present the views which are different from what you normally hear on a range of current event topics. Yes, this Tuesday, I find it to be a very interesting and exciting show. Like I said, we have a very special guest with us here. Um, Senior Counsel, Mr. Tony Astefan is in the house, people. Yeah. Sam, Kenny, how are you?
Greetings, Tanya, and greetings to the listening audience. I'm excited too. I'm happy to have our dear friend, Senior Counsel, in the house with us. He certainly is an encyclopedia as far as Dominican politics is concerned and issues of the day. And so he's fairly well known, needs no introduction. And so we're looking forward to discussing a range of issues with him. Certainly, we want to know his take on a number of things, from electoral reform to just the nuts and bolts of what's going on, what's happening, because he's not just a Dominican attorney. He's a regional senior counsel, and he's probably the foremost senior counsel, certainly in the Eastern Caribbean, from St. Kitts, Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, you name it. You go anywhere and you mention Tony Estefan, and he's a household name. So we are happy, Tony. Welcome. We are happy to have you, that you've taken the time out to talk with us and with our listening audience.
Yes. Kenny, how are you?
I'm okay.
Okay, good. Yes, Mr. Asifan, I'm glad that Sam gave us a little prelude, but I was there busy trying to find more about you online and I didn't find a thing. So I'm hoping that's where we can start and you can let us know who is Tony Asifan.
And how did
You
he
saw not. You saw not. You saw nothing from me, Joe.
not, I'm being really
I'm,
honest. Okay, 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 all
I'm
right.
teasing you. I'm
I saw
teasing you. I'm
news.
teasing.
I saw news. I saw that sort of thing. But to say a nice little bio on who is Tony Astafan, no,
Yeah.
nothing. So
Well,
I'd love
well,
for
let
you
me
to
tell
share
you.
with us.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Sam didn't give me much of a choice to say no.
That's
Oh,
right.
Neither did Ken. Neither did Ken. I was. So I'm here at kind courtesies of my two friends. Well, I'm really not sure how to describe myself. I mean, well, I will share something as to how I became a lawyer, right?
mhm.
I was fascinated with Perry Mason as a young fellow growing up, but I decided to study political science first. And when I got my degree from York University, where I met Rosie Douglas and Walter Rodney and Chetty Jagan and so on, my father says to me, "What do you plan on doing now that you have your degree in politics?" I said, "Well, I'm going to do my master's." He said to me, "Well, I'm not going to pay for you to become a communist." These are his words. And you have a choice. You either come in the business and help us, or you have to go and study law. And that's how I became a lawyer at the
Mm,
point of at the barrel of a gun.
okay. And how did you become a senior counsel?
By doing well.
By doing well,
um,
that's it.
well,
If you were to give us
I
some advice, us young people, how do we become, we get to that level?
stay focused.
Mm,
Law is not a job. Law is a jealous mistress.
a jealous.
And one of the fundamental issues or problems that have experienced over the years, you have, as difficult as it may be, you have to separate your legal profession and see it as a life, and don't end up in a bar or a restaurant at 4 or 5 o'clock. And if you are in politics, like some of us advise politicians, others are politicians elected, you really have, for the sake of your own profession, to separate the influences of politics to the law. And if you'd follow that example that I did with studious, consistent work and research and redrafts and so on, and never be afraid to ask a senior law. I owe a deep debt of gratitude to Carl Hudson Phillips from Trinidad, Jenna Amo of blessed memory, Geoffrey Harris, Ashton Pipe of blessed memory, Cozy Harris of blessed memory, and there was one more, Dr. Liverpool of blessed memory. I could approach them at any, and did I mention Cozy Harris? At any time, for and Iman De Freitas, who is still alive. I could call them at any time, night or day, and they would be prepared to help me. And in fact, Amon Harris gave me my first non-paying job as a lawyer, where I didn't have a prescribed job or a salary, but I would get spending money for carnival time on weekends because I stayed and helped them to get things done. But it's a passion. It's not a job.
Mm,
Tanya, Tiffany, me, Tony is known for a sharp tongue, and in the business that you're in, you wield the tongue. But Tony also, I don't know, most Dominicans maybe they see him in or hear of him in public and don't know Tony. Tony, I have to say, Tony, I'm sure you don't recall our first time we met, and I wish to share this. I had just returned to Dominica in 1995 and was in the process of considering doing something in Dominica. And I went to Pearl's restaurant, and at that time they're close to where La Robe, they were close to where La Robe was. And there comes this guy who I didn't know, and he asked me who I am, introduced himself, and he said, let me take you to lunch. And and you treated me to lunch. You were so welcoming, and you told me, you're so happy that as a Dominican abroad, I was considering coming. And I didn't know you from, anywhere. And I thought that was so important because these are the little interactions that kind of go a very long way. And I've known Tony for a long time. We haven't always been on the same side politically. But likewise, our personal relationship, Tony, has
Very
always
true.
flourished. And I never, you're a political lawyer, but I can't deal with you from a political level because I don't see you as a politician. No matter where I stand, you're Tony the friend. So I think Dominicans need to appreciate that there's this side. Sometimes we're a little more complicated than our public images, but you're very kind and generous, and I know you've helped a lot of people out, and you don't wave a flag on that. So I just like to, for the record, state that that's the Tony Estefan I know.
But if I may jump in here, can I?
Yes, go ahead.
Well,
One of the things that I've always enjoyed about my life is that when I came to Antigua doing work, one of my closest friends was an executive member of the United Progressive Party. He still is one of my best friends in Antigua today. But what I cherished most was, despite the fact that Dame Eugenia Charles of blessed memory knew I was a Michael Douglas friend, supporter, advisor, Rosie Douglas, and so on. When she was Prime Minister, she called me to her office on two occasions. I'll only discuss one. And she said to me, uh, and I love the way she said it, my cabinet and my kitchen cabinet. Dame Eugenia Charles, I think, was well known for having two cabinets. Said to me that with this bugging allegation thing that was floating, that I can trust you to do this matter. Can I trust you? A simple question. Can I trust you? I said, well, yes, but what do you want me to do? She says, well, I want you to be counsel to the Commission of Inquiry because you're not one of us, meaning a freedom supporter, but my cabinet have absolute confidence in your professional ability to do it. And as everyone knows, I did it. And Dame Eugenia Charles, after her retirement, and I would go to that place, Coconut something on the Bayfront.
Mm.
I forgot the name of it. The restaurant on the Bayfront there that was owned by a French guy. We went there for breakfast almost every Saturday until she got ill.
Mhm.
So we, despite my political positions and my lawsuits against her, including on one occasion for Michael Douglas against her, my cases against her government, Daniel Shilliford, Evans John, and a whole set of other ones. Um, she was still able to relate to me as a professional and as a human being, and I've always cherished that, and that has been my standard.
I would
I,
like I would like, sorry to cut you, Tony, but I would like also for for you to find a little time, carve out a little space to talk about the health of the legal fraternity in Dominica. And you can probably compare it to the rest of the Eastern Caribbean because you float between the jurisdictions. And the reason I'm asking, or I'd like this, is because the, the the problem that we tend to have in these small islands is to denigrate someone's ability when you don't like one facet of their being, whether it is their religion or their politics or otherwise. In this case, it's politics. And I think it's important to kind of get a grasp, Tony, for you to give a grasp of of the legal issues or the legal strengths of our jurisdictions and the things that happens in our jurisdictions, independent of your political stance, because I know you have thoughts on even some of the lawyers who are practicing, some of the things that are being done within the jurisdictions. It's important. It's extremely important because
yeah,
we lose a lot of intellectual debate to, to the contempt that is thrown back and forth on all sides for the political stances that people take. So, it'll be good for you to kind of talk to
yeah.
the integrity of the legal positions that are happening all throughout the Eastern Caribbean, but most pointedly in Dominica. Okay?
Well, sometimes you have to separate the public utterances from the private utterances. Let me put it to you this way. Um, I am doing a case in St. Vincent right now against Jomo Thomas, who I've known for years. He's taken a very strong position on the anti-vaccination matter, and he's being led by Cara Shillingford from Dominica. And we would pick up the phone and call each other. I mean, people would be surprised to hear that, even in relation to matters in Dominica. I would pick up the phone and call most of the lawyers I'm up against, including Carol, who is seen as being on the other side, without animosity, without anger, without hostility, and so on. I think by and large, the bar associations and the lawyers in the bar association do the best they can. There are obviously exceptions, but I think by and large, what I would like to see more, if about the health of the law and the bar associations and so on, is that I would like to see more persons come to the defense of the judiciary and other offices like the DPP and so on. When the lawyers must know that the salacious attacks on the integrity of the judges are absolutely out of whack. And it's unfortunate that in many jurisdictions, not just Dominica, I have had to be the one to say, well, look, this cannot be right. Because you can't lose in the High Court and pillar the High Court. They're winning the Court of Appeal and say, well, it's the best court ever in the world. And then the next time you lose in that very Court of Appeal, it's corrupt, it's Gaston Court, it's a Denzel Douglas Court, it's a Gonzalez Court, it's a scary court, and so on. We need to pass that. And I think, unfortunately, many of the lawyers and bar associations are a little gun shy. They're afraid to make statements because talk show in the OECS, can't talk about the Caribbean, has become fairly toxic. I can tell you, I've been the victim of numerous, how should I put it, debates on talk radio. All right, stretching from St. Kitts all the way down to St. Vincent. And we must not be afraid of political reaction. I am not afraid of any political reaction from any jurisdiction, any political party or politician, some of which have come from prime ministers who didn't like what I said when I may have been representing somebody in opposition. But by and large, I have confidence in the Bar Association. I have confidence in the judiciary. I've been involved in it for 30-something years. There's nothing that has come to my attention that even remotely think there was something wrong, despite all the talk. So I have confidence in the lawyers. I think most lawyers do their best. And I am not worried about the future of the law.
Okay. You know, you mentioned something, Mr. Astefan, about, I guess, talk radio and being, I don't want to use the word attacked, but it sounds like that's what you were saying. You know, you're hearing a lot of talk on the radio from St. Vincent, St. Kitts, going down, about your stance on certain things. Am I right? Is that what you? Yeah.
Yeah, I would walk in the street in St. Vincent and say, "Look, you come thief our damn money again." I could only laugh, Sam.
But I have to ask you, do you think that these conversations circulating, you know, or what you're doing, you know, as a lawyer, or even your part to play here in Dominica as a lawyer and as I think a very public activist for the DLP administration, do you think the things that you have been doing also has a big part to play in why people may be attacking you?
In Dominica, for sure. But I want to let you know that I was challenged in the court in St. Lucia to be removed on the case because I was quote unquote an activist, and the High Court and the Court of Appeal threw that out. I have the same right of freedom of expression as of anybody else. I take it as a badge of honor that you think I'm an activist for the Labour Party, but I have the right to speak about it. But in many of the other islands, it had nothing to do with what I said.
So what did it have to do with?
My representation of Prime Minister Gonzalez, of Prime Minister Kenny Anthony, of Lester Bird, of Denzel Douglas, where fellas would leading up to an election, bus drivers full of tourists and passengers would stop on the street and say, "Astafan, this is the last one. Are you winning?" I say, "Boss, I'm not running." You know?
Can I ask a question? Okay, sorry.
Sure.
Can I follow up with that? I'm going to ask a very provocative question because, Tony, you know, we keep it real. And this is something that I don't share, but I think it's been discussed. If I haven't heard it 100 times, and not from you, but from people on this very radio station, they would call in and they would have the cockroach and cacador. Tony Astefan called black people cockroach and cacador. Now I happen to know your wife is black, your child. You know, you never treat me like a cockroach and a cacador, but I don't know. Maybe I'm special. Does Tony think black people are cockroaches and cacador? What's up with that? Where did that come from? And clear the air on that, Tony, because I know that's
Well,
not you, but clear the air.
I've cleared it 1,000 times, and I clear it again. And thank you for that. We were going in 2005 election. I think Prime Minister Skerritt's first election to Castle Blues. There was a guy called Don Reed, Simeon Albert. Two of them had a girl with each of them. There was another couple. I don't remember if it was Darren and somebody else. We stopped on the river to take a river bath. And one of the girls says, Tony, you hear the fellas say that Skerritt is a big chicken? And Edison was on TV doing clucker, cluck, clucker, clucker. I said, so what you want me to do? He said, but you have to answer him. I said, okay. But you know what chickens eat, Tony? I said, no. In the river, right? Crayfish and cacador and cockroach, sorry. I say, I see. So if Skerritt is a chicken and elections coming up, I can legitimately ask the crowd, well, if Prime Minister Skerritt is a chicken, and I described him as the biggest fowl cock in the cage, what does a fowl cock eat? And somebody behind me, one of the girls, shouted out, cacador and cockroach, or one of the two and so on. And then the crowd went crazy with it, and I just, like a band leader, encouraged it. The suggestion that I would call black people cacador and cockroach, it's just childish. You call people all sorts of names, and they are supposed to take it, and we do, I take it. I make a joke about fowls and what fowls eat, because if Prime Minister Skerritt is a fowl and he's going to the election and we want this fowl to win, he has to do something. He has to eat cockroach and the cacadors. What generally that was it. But to say that I say that, no, I mean.
I know better, Tony. I just wanted to give you an opportunity
you
in
said
this
that,
medium
but
to
you did not
clarify
mean
that.
what you. Sorry,
Yeah.
Sam. You said what you said, but you did not. The meaning behind it, what people think you meant, is not what you meant. That's what you're saying.
Well, absolutely. I was not saying that people who support United Workers' Party who are black are cockroaches or cacadors. I mean, that's ridiculous. It was satire at best, or sarcasm at worst. But I did use the words. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, I've said 100, 1,000 times I've used the word. But anybody who knows me, I'm born in Roseau and I grew up in Dominica, Fonkele, Goodwill. The suggestion that I am a racist is just a figment of somebody's mind.
Okay. You know, it always makes me wonder, why do we even choose these types of words? You're not the only person I think I've heard use. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Asifan. I don't think those choice of words is very articulate. I find it can cause a lot of the same issue that you have to be explaining yourself 1,000 times to
Yeah,
explain,
it's
what I
it has
meant.
words that it has words that have triggered a lot of exaggeration about what I said, and perhaps I should have said it differently. But my intent is clear.
Yes.
I mean, the suggestion that I would call people of color when I am working with and representing political parties that consist of Kalinago warriors and descendants of Africa, it's ridiculous that I would sit there with hundreds of thousands of dollars of supporters, or sit in cabinet, or sit in an executive meeting, or one-on-one with the Prime Minister, who I know to be a descendant of African, if not descendant of slaves, and become have any racial overtones. It's just nonsensical.
Okay. Guys, let's take a quick break, okay? It's 6:29 in the evening. You're right here with us on the other side. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Let me just remind you, I think we're live on that Facebook page on Q95 if you'd like to join us over there. And with us in studio, we have our special guest, Senior Counsel, Mr. Tony Astafan. So keep it locked right here. We will be right back.
Right here, right now, I put the offer out. I don't wanna chase you down. I know you, yeah, you run with me, and I can cut you free out of the treachery and walls you keep in. So trade that typical for something colorful. And if it's crazy, live a little crazy. You can play it sensible, a king of conventional, or you can risk it all and see. Don't you wanna get away from the same? Oh, part you gotta play, cause I got what you need. So come with me and take the ride. It'll take you to the other side, cause you can do like you do, or you can do like me. Stay in the cage, or you finally take the key. Oh, damn, suddenly you're free to fly. It'll take you to the other side.
Okay, my friend, you wanna cut me in, but I hate to tell you, but it just won't happen. So thanks, but no, I think I'm good to go, cause I quite enjoy the life you say I'm trapped in. Now I admire you, and that'll show you do. You're onto something, really it's something. I live among the swells, and we don't pick up peanut shells. I'll have to leave that up to you. Don't you know that I'm okay with up, down, but I can tell
Welcome back, listeners of Q95. We're here on the other side. We have with us Senior Counsel, Mr. Tony Astafan, and we're just having a general conversation today about all things, every and anything that we can touch on. Actually,
So,
sorry, go ahead, Kenny.
no, I was gonna say let's try and get into the meat right now.
Yes, we're thinking about diving into electoral reform.
Correct.
Yes. Mr. Astafan, what do you think about electoral reform for Dominica? I just want you to share with me your honest views. Is it needed? Are you in support of it?
I have no doubt it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
The legislation that we have is old. It needs to be updated. The things in that are not there that should be in any modern day electoral legislation. For example, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if a candidate tells a deliberate and intentional lie about another candidate and wins, the candidate could file an election petition in the court to have that election result set aside simply on the basis of a deliberate and intentional lie. I think we need to regularize the access of Dominicans to vote. I think we need to regularize the people who are already registered and who can confirm their registration being given the right to vote. I support the Dennis Byron Commission. I participated in it on behalf of the Dominica Labour Party. I think other political parties have, and I look forward to what it is that he has to say.
So why are we, it just seems like we're stuck. We're waiting.
Well, you know why we're stuck? And I'm glad you asked me that question.
Why?
In 2017, when the government went to amend the law in 2017 to provide for confirmation of overseas voters and for ID cards, and to say that cheating and bribery means A, B, and C. And the ID card reform and the confirmation process was vetted and approved by the council to the Jamaican electoral office. I forgot the name now, right? There was violence outside the parliament. The government's trying to legalize bribery. I don't know how you can do that, but that was the argument. Parliament was adjourned on the threat of the violence. They went back to the AGs or the draftsman. They took out the two parts of the amendments that had caused all the problems. The leader of the opposition is on record and saying, now that these two things have gone, we can now move forward with the proposed amendments. That's 2018. That's 4 years ago, right? What happens? Loftus Jura files an application for an injunction, and in accordance with the decision of the Privy Council in St. Kitts in the Mark Brantley matter, if a citizen files an application requesting an injunction in some of these matters, and alleging that it affects his rights, constitutional or fundamental rights, the government should do nothing to nullify that procedure. So the government stopped. There was no legitimate, rational, legal reasons for the injunction. Then we had this, then we had that. I'm hoping it now comes to an end with the Byron report and recommendations.
Tony, I'd like to broach this a bit closer, because my personal issue, which I've ventilated in the past, is the lack of bipartisanship. No law, not even the intent to pursue a law towards an end can survive zero bipartisanship. Now, it seems to me right now that when Sir Dennis produces his report, there has to be an intent to accept the report and accept that Sir Dennis Byron has the credentials and the intent to produce a report that is going to be acceptable towards the electoral reform process. How do we get to the next stage? Because I anticipate that there's going to be another set of hurdles, because the way I hear Sir Dennis being rubbished, it's almost setting the stage for, how do you put it, for contesting the report. So that's my first question. The second assertion is, how do we go from having this put in place to the next discussion, which is about the quality of the electioneering, the campaigning and the messaging? Because at the end of the day, and I've said that as well, when you look back at the history of, for example, voter ID fraud in Dominica, I don't know, you will know better than me, but I would think that if there is substantive voter ID fraud that has been reported or been happening, that we would know about it. There's not necessarily been any notable cases of voter ID fraud or people voting under dead people's name, etc., etc., etc. So really, the electoral reform process is to put checks and balances in place that should govern our system in perpetuity for as long as it's relevant. But it really does not reflect the fact that somehow the system is broken. Because if the system was broken, we would know more about it. How do we move on to the next stage, which is to accept that whoever wins the next election has done so fairly and squarely? Because it seems to me every time an election comes around, we come to the same kind of pressing points, which is that one side does not want to accept that if they lose, that it is fair. And that is really what it is about. And until that hurdle is passed, there won't, whatever electoral reform happens, the elections will be contested in the courts, it seems.
Well, that's the problem. That really is the problem. Because let's put it to you this way. We are seeing now reflected in the United States federal government an attitude by Trump that has been prevalent in this country since 2000. Because it seems as if in our countries, when a political party wins an election, the law is fantastic. When they lose, it's something else. And I want to comment on one or two things that you said. One, the demonization of Dr. Liverpool is being echoed with the demonization of Sir Dennis Byron. And many listeners on this radio program may not really appreciate who Sir Dennis Byron is. He was the Chief Justice of the OECS um, Supreme Court. He was the President of the International Court of Justice in Tanzania. He was President of the CCJ. He's now given a significant position as chairman of some United Nations tribunal. I saw a note of it somewhere. This is a man who's recognized internationally. I would have thought that would be a trigger to get the sort of partisanship that you're speaking about. Now, the second point is the question of the quality of the campaign. I think the biggest problem we have in this island is the quality of the candidates. I think we have a major problem with that. I mean, we need to elevate the discussion. We need to go beyond Mapri and Marboyd and Massini Cemetery and the constant. The people what and I'm making a general statement around the OECS. I listen to talk shows in St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua, St. Kitts. The people are battle fatigued with the constant allegations over and over again for the last 10, 15, 20 years. But on the important question of ID fraud, I have read almost every supervisor of elections report since the day of the former police officer lady and Clem John Weber. And I have not seen a single case, a single complaint of any allegation of ID fraud.
In Dominica?
In Dominica, there's none. And the allegations that have been consistently made over the years, 2005, 2009, 2014, through the criminal complaints in the Magistrates Court in 2019, the bands that are playing, every political party in the Caribbean plays bands at shows, including international and regional bands, are bringing electoral voters, supporters, to vote, who want to come to the country and vote. And that's an area of law that I have read almost every single case published on that fundamental issue of transportation. And the core allegation requires there to be some level of persuasion, some undue influence, something to make the transportation conditional, like a quid pro quo. And unless there's an existence in a quid pro quo, it can't succeed. And that is one of the reasons why in 2005, 10 plus election petitions were thrown out. In 2009, another huge amount was thrown out. The only ones that actually went to trial were the allegations of the French citizenship, which was eventually thrown out as well. 2014, the DPP looked at the witness statements that of the witnesses of the alleged fraudulent treating and so on. She didn't think it came up to scratch. I thought it was worse than that. She nulliprosed. There was not a single challenge to the DPP's decision to nulliprosed. 2009, another 10, 15 election petitions were struck out simply because you can't pass the threshold. And the reason why you can't pass the threshold is that you don't have the facts to back it up. Kenny, you don't have the facts to back it up.
Now, going back, just one more thing, going back to the quality of the campaign. I mean, I'm not talking about the campaign itself. To be truth be told, Tony, when it comes to the election campaigns, both sides say a lot of nasty things on the platforms about each other. That's the political culture that we have. So you can't blame one side or the other. But what I really want to talk to is something that you alluded to, is this 24/7 political cycle post the elections. And this is traumatizing our society because it's not just here. It's not just here. It happens in Antigua. It happens in all of the different jurisdictions, but we are here. What happens is this lack of acceptance of a result and always blaming something or someone else. The people are stupid, everybody's corrupt, it was stolen, etc. We then go through a cycle of 5 years where you have a strong contingent of people who are permanently angry. And this causes all kinds of issues. It causes relationships issues on the island. It never ends. No, we say it's an island thing. It's happening in the United States. It's happening in the UK right now. There's a kind of permanent angry political culture between the Tories and Labour. The Democrats and Republicans are united right now on the war in Ukraine, but it's that same simmering anger is there. But for a small island, we can't keep on going like this. And my issue with the electoral reform is, how does the electoral reform constitute a full stop? In other words, it comes out, you get the ID cards, that's straightforward. You get the cleaning of the list, that's straightforward. What's not straightforward from where I'm sitting and what you're talking about is the whole idea of the total re-registration and the
Confirmation.
And the confirmation and the fact that Dominicans who are overseas are eligible to come in to vote. That is going to be a big issue. Because it seems to me that it's almost like what you have going on in the United States. There's one side saying everybody must be given a total opportunity to vote, and the other ones are saying, well, only some people have a right to vote. So how do we not get bogged down again?
Well, that's why I said the quality of the candidate is important. The question of the diasporians having the right to vote, once registered, they have to be registered in Dominica before they've departed to go to the diaspora. The Supreme Court of Canada, the European Human Rights Court, and the other courts have dealt with that, suggesting that you ought not to have a short period in which if somebody doesn't come to vote, come or to visit or to carnival or something, that they're disqualified from remaining on the list. It has to be a sufficiently broad period of time. It has to respect the fact that there's cultural and connections, personal connections and remittances in the millions of dollars coming to the country. So they have the obvious right to vote. What they want, it seems, from what I understand, is to have a process where only those who reside in the country should be allowed to re-register. I think that would be a significant affront to the constitutional right to vote. But I want to go on one other point that you made. I don't have a problem with a politician or a party saying, boy, the election this, the election that, and files a petition. And the petition is determined one way or the other, especially when they're thrown out because you don't have sufficient in the document to pass the gate to enter the court. That should be the end of the matter. But Dominica has this very special feature where they savage the courts. The courts then become a political victim simply because they have decided that the petition filed by whatever party does not meet the threshold to enter the determination on a full and substantive determination on the merits of the case. They don't look at themselves and say, well, what did we do wrong? What did we miss? Lawyer A, lawyer B, you helped us to draft this. Why did you draft this way? We're not lawyers. They don't do that, Kenny. They don't look in the mirror, as you said. But they savage the courts. They savage this judge and that judge, male or female, doesn't really matter. They savage them and so on. And it happens recently with when the former senator had returned and was arrested. Oh, the political court, scary court, it's a political this. Next thing, things are done properly. His lawyers come to court. The prosecution accepts what he's saying and no objection to bail, and the magistrate releases him on his own recovery with the surety and allows him to travel. You don't hear anybody calling the radio and saying, man, why did I curse the court? Obviously, it was not political interference. The Roosevelt Skerritt election petition matter and the magistrate's court wasn't decided by the CCJ, it was decided by our Court of Appeal. They're the ones that said that the magistrate has jurisdiction to determine these criminal complaints. We are the ones that have to be. They don't give credit to the court when it goes their way. It's a constant battering because they think that's the answer to the solution to their problems. No, it's not. The answer to this problem is follow the advice of justice. Rollins in election petition cases. You know an election is coming. Put your legal team together. Give your agents at the polling stations notepads. Give your members notepads so they can write down what they see, photograph it, bring it to the headquarters, show it to the lawyers, get it done within 21 days. That's what the former chief justice said lawyers have to do instead of complaining about the processes of the court. But they don't do it.
Mr.
Don't do it.
Astefan, I want to go back to what you said because I asked a question and I think we went all over the place there. I asked a question about why are we stuck? And you said it was a good one. And I think we started to explain, going back to the report from Sir Dennis. But I think a lot of people believe, and it's from an alleged email, they said that you wrote. I'm actually getting a lot of messages coming through about cautioning the Prime Minister about electoral reform causing a loss of his winning legacy. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I
That
will speak to
email,
that.
that
I will
correspond.
speak
I'm
to
not
that.
sure if it's an email or a statement.
It's an email.
Email.
It's an
Yes.
email. And I thank you once again for asking a very, very pertinent question.
Because people think that we're stuck because of the present administration not wanting to move forward.
But that is a figment of their imagination because this government has spent close to $6+ million getting the necessary equipment and personnel in place and training to give effect to the recommendations and amendments and reform that was being suggested by Ms. Carol Weeks, whatever her name was, that was brought to the Parliament in 2018. Right? We are blocked because, as Ken points out, this constant by failure to cooperate on fundamental issues. I was walking in town and I met the then chairman of the commission. I said, boss, how are things going? He says, well, one of the members of the appointed by the prime minister is not attending the meetings. I said, oh, why? He said, I can't tell you anymore. I can't tell you anymore. I'm driving out, going home. I see the other one who was appointed by the then prime minister then from Marigot. He was in the bananas business, right? So I pulled up, I called him, he said, well, I don't know, don't ask me, I'm not there either, ask the other one. I said, but the other one tells me he's not there. And I'm saying, but that can't be right. And I had heard Don Christopher, who was a member at the time, speaking of some reforms. I don't know what I was at Guava at the time, speaking about some reforms of something that they were considering at the commission. And here I am, counsel to the prime minister, hearing the two members appointed by him are not attending the meeting. That is what triggered my email to him. I didn't know what the particulars were. I didn't know what were the substance of the matter. But I can tell you that I, Anthony Wadi Asafat SC, fully support a reform. I supported it in 2017. I supported it in 2018. I appeared before Sir Dennis Byron and I put forward the position of the political party. And I have said reform is necessary. But reform cannot be good if the members of the opposition party don't attend at all. Likewise, if the members appointed by the prime minister don't attend at all, then you're going to have a problem.
So, Mr. Asafan, you're saying that you did write an email, a correspondence.
I absolutely did. I never denied it.
Warning the PM against the reform or
no, not against. I told him that I told him that his members were not attending.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And it makes sense. You think the leader of the opposition today.
So where is everybody getting this term, and they're using it a lot, that you basically warn the PM that if he would agree to this reform, that it will end his winning, it will end his or sign on to this, it will end his winning legacy. Everybody is using that term. And when
never,
we go
well,
together, just out of the sky like that, this winning legacy.
well, let's put it this way. I listen to Q95 sometimes, and I don't know where they get most of the stuff from. I can safely tell you that my concern was, as any lawyer representing either the prime minister or the leader of the opposition, I would be horrified to find out that a serious matter, whatever it was at the time, I don't know, was being discussed, and the leader of the opposition members are not present, or the prime minister is, and any decision can be made. If a politician appoints members to the commission and they realize the other politicians' members are not there, don't you think they will try to take advantage of that, of the absence of that person, and pass something that might very well be hostile? I think the answer is yes. I
Let me
think the
ask you
answer is yes.
another question. This one
Sure.
is coming out from our audience. They're asking, was the Electoral Commission faced with implementing reforms some 13 years ago? And if yes, what happened? What happened?
13 years ago.
Yes, were they faced with implementing reform then?
The only documentation concerning reforms that I have seen is in recent times from the Electoral Commission.
Okay.
I
have
I
another
I
answer.
I am not. It is Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit that has arranged for the Commonwealth advisors, electoral law experts to come to Dominica to assist the commission. And sometimes I wish the members of appointed to the commission by the leader of the opposition would say so. Mia Motley was here once as an advisor and a consultant to the commission to assist them before she got into politics. Carol Weeks, I think her name is, the Jamaican lawyer. Other experts sent here by the Commonwealth to assist. Monies was allocated for expenditure for the reform. I mean,
But
that's what I
Tony,
know. I don't
25,
know what it was that Don Christopher was saying on the radio, but it was of concern to me that members appointed by the prime minister were not attending the meetings.
Tony, so I want to just cut in here because coming back to the same concern, and the question I asked in the beginning is now relevant, very much more relevant now. If there's any kind of dialogue, and it's something I always talk about, if there's any kind of dialogue between the lawyers on the opposition side and the lawyers on the government side, meaning yourself and those who are aiding you, then there has to be some level of dialogue that is going to reach to a next level when the electoral reform report and recommendations are made. Because it seems to me that the politicians on their own will not get it done because there is no history over the last 10 to 15 years of bipartisanship on any issue. So how are we going to get to the stage where by the time the next election comes, we have, because people hear all of these arguments, but they just want to be able to get to that next stage, which we have voter ID cards, we have a clean list, and we can move forward, and no one, someone will always say it, but we can truly say everybody's on board to say, when you lose, you lose. How do we get to
Well,
that point?
in the present state of our country, that's not going to happen. You know it, I know it. Dennis Byron is going to come with recommendations. And somebody, some person, some lawyer is going to come up, some politician with this brilliant idea, it's another hatchet job, it's another cutlass job, and so on. I do not have the expectations or confidence that you have that things are going to change on the basis of that. I have also seen papers on election law written by some lawyers. I don't have to call the name. And sometimes I wonder what it is that they're writing about. You see, perhaps I have an unfair advantage in that I've been involved in almost every single election petition in the OACS since 1997. So I have a voluminous understanding of what the election law is. But come, you're writing a paper, give me a call. I don't know if you're writing a paper. Before you publish it, you want to have a dialogue with me? Everybody knows my number. Give me a call. And let's go back to 2018. when the references to bribery and treaty were taken out, why was it necessary after the leader of the opposition said, now that these two things are off, we can move forward? Did Loftus Jura think it was in the public interest to stop Parliament from receiving or discussing and passing into law recommendations that took out what caused the violence in 2017, and recommendations that were approved and recommended by Carol, whatever her name is, the expert from Jamaica? It's mind-boggling. That's why I don't have the confidence that you have, Kenny, my dear friend, that somehow this is going to change. I think our culture is with us, and something dramatic has to happen with new players on the front line, new opening batsmen to go and bat, and older fellas like me and Sam, but not you, still young, go and sit down in Jungle Bay and have a rum punch and just talk till the sun go down.
I endorse that, Tony. I just want to chime in to the when you lose, you lose
I don't want to limit
statement.
your time, Sam, but I don't want to limit your time, but we need to open up the lines in a bit. But go ahead, please.
To the when you lose statement. You know, I think we all four of us here have gone on record as supporting electoral reform. And Tony, you've been unequivocal tonight and in the past in your support and endorsement. But our elections have been monitored. Every election that I've been around since the late 90s in Dominica have had international monitors that have deemed the election effectively to be free and fair, notwithstanding the recommendations for the modernization of the process. But the results they deem reflect the will of the voters. So I think we need to be clear on that. And it's a thing where, just like the court is ravaged or the civil service is ravaged or whoever, there is a sore loser culture. I don't think it's going to change. And Tony, I think you're absolutely correct with this. I mean, the thing is, we need to do the right thing. The government need to do the right thing, notwithstanding. But I think that this is very little chance, because I even hear some of the proponents of the electoral reform, their stated objective is to get rid of the government. And it's not to reform the system. And so if you reform the system and they don't change the government, then the reform will be deemed as insufficient, and I think it will continue. So that's just I'm an optimist at heart, but to be realistic, I think it would take a super miracle for us to get to the stage where Kenny people can have the if we lose, we lose.
Sam, I have one hope. Because if Tony, you mentioned someone like Kara Shillingford, who I know you have great professional respect for. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
So it has to take relationships like these. These are the kind of things that have to happen, where people have to be able to sit down behind the scenes and talk to the possibility of a result. Because otherwise, we're going to end up in court anyway.
Are y'all doing that, Mr. Asifan, sitting behind the scenes as counsel?
Well, not an electoral reform, but when Kara won the case in the Court of Appeal and in the CCJ, I was either the first or one of the first to message her and congratulate her. I think she did a wonderful job. Maybe Kara and I can work to solve the bitterness of an election campaign and an election reform. Maybe.
Let's open up the lines, guys. It's already 7:03, and the lines have been blowing up since the beginning of the show. But you guys know the number: 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, and of course, for our overseas listeners, 305-432-9624. I will also take some of your comments on the Facebook page. Let's take this one as coming in. Caller, you're live on the other side. Good evening.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Yes. I'm listening to the discussion you have in there with Tony Asifan, and I'm rather flabbergasted and baffled at the same time. A man who refers to black people in Dominica as roaches and savage when his ancestors from Lebanon. Isn't it a shame?
Can we just move on?
I work for And I worked for the company years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I used to take him to his grandfather's house when he was a young kid going to the convent school. And I just cannot understand how somebody can do that to black people, and black people are there like glorifying the guy. Like, that's a racist statement.
Okay.
No question about it. It's racist.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take another one. Caller, you're live on the other side.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
All right. Senior Counsel, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Clarence.
Okay. Let me just talk about that famous letter that has been going on about from Senior Counsel.
Okay, keep it short, please, Clarence.
Please.
Keep it short because the lines are blowing up. I want to give other people a
I'm going to keep
chance.
it very short.
Yes.
In 2008,
Mm-hmm.
the Electoral Commission took a decision to clean the voters list. The Electoral Commission is constituted of 5 persons, 2 appointed by the opposition and 2 appointed by the government and the chairman. Section 5610 of the Constitution states clearly that any decision of the commission must have a majority of its members. That means the decision must be taken by 3 members. That decision that was taken in 2008, the Kondwani Williams was absent and Richard Charles was absent. The chairman was present and Attorney Commodore was present and Marriott Warrington. 2 members voted for the decision, and then the chairman abstained. So the decision was carried by 2 members. The majority of the members, as per 5610 of the Constitution, says is free. So 2 members took the decision, so the decision could not have been carried. And that, I think that is what Tony had written about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Clarence. Thanks for the clarification.
No. Let me just say this here.
Mm-hmm.
Most of what Clarence said, I was not aware of.
Okay.
I only knew that the members of Poly were not didn't turn up. I didn't know about any vote or what it is they were voting on.
Mm.
Except the general term that Don Christopher used that I heard on DBS News about electoral reform or something like that.
All right. Let's take another one. Caller, you're live on the other side. Please make it quick. Caller, are you there? All right. Let's take another one. Caller, you're live on the other side. Hello? We have a lot of calls. Hello, you're live on the other side.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
To your guest. Yeah.
Please lower down your radio.
Yes, I will not my radio. Tanya,
Mm-hmm.
you need to check out Mr. Sheridan Gregoire
Mm-hmm.
so that he would give you the contents of the email that we are speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see, it would be better for your listening audience to have the actual email in front of you where Mr. Astafan is making his statement with respect to the work that was going on at the commission where they were cleaning up the voters list. And he actually said the words that you quoted to him, that he was concerned about the winning legacy of Mr. Williams.
Okay.
The email has nothing to do with members not attending the meeting as the story that Mr. Astafan is trying to concoct for you there right now. That's not the way at all. Even the story he gave about the cockroach issue, that didn't happen in Cassius where he said it happened. It is in the valley where he was saying how to kill the cockroach. And when I say Edison James, say cockroach. When I say Julie Timothy, say cacador. So those are the things that we have to think. So I know Kenny and Sam don't want to hear those types of things. But we have to be honest with our listeners if we have to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Even the recent court case he's talking about where the CCJ ordered a case to go to trial. And Mr. Astafan came to Dominica and they made sure they pressured the DPP to nulliprose the case that the CCJ gave instructions to go to trial. And that is what Mr. Astafan needs to focus on. And the lie that he told the CCJ court when he told them that he did not ask the DPP to nulliprose the case before it reached to the CCJ. Those are the things that we have to deal with and to ask him, why is it in Dominica only that our election petitions are not dealt with in a timely manner in this court? Why they have to take years, especially when we do all our filing on time? He's just telling you about they're throwing them out and not giving you the facts of the story. And
Okay.
to ask him how many of our cases, election petitions, are still before the court, begging to be heard.
Let's have
And
him
yet
answer
we
that
don't-
question. Let's have him answer that question, caller. So how many of our cases are still before the court, Mr. Astafan?
Zero.
0. Okay. And
The only thing we're waiting on is a ruling from the TCJ whether leave should be given for an appeal. 0. And the other thing, I'm not going to jump in the gut and respond to the rest of it. I'm really not.
Okay. Let's take this one. Caller, you're live on the other side. Hello. Please listen. Hi.
Yes. Yes.
Don't listen to your radio, please. Caller, are you there?
Mr. Astafan is lying.
Okay.
Mr. Astafan is telling lies, and you all are perpetuating that. Those are the things that destroy the society. We cannot build a society on lies like this.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Caller, you're live on the other side.
No need for a response there.
It was a statement. So,
Oh, sorry. I thought it was a cleverly disguised question. Okay.
caller, you're live. Are you there? No? You know what I wanted to ask you, Mr. Asif, and I'm going to take a little pause.
Please
I
do.
keep hearing that winning legacy. And the weird thing is, when as I said, I did some research on you and I didn't find anything. I did come across this one interview you had with Lennox Linton. And I think that was 2005. And you had an organization for good and accountable governance. Am I right? You were a part of a
I was part of it, yeah. I was
Yeah.
my father and Philip Nassif and others and Brother
Yes.
Jermaine who formed it, yeah.
Right. And you all had these 8 fundamentals. I listened to that particular section of the interview. And one of the fundamentals that you guys, the 3 men, yourself included, stated was maximum of 2 terms for a PM, for a prime minister. That's what one of the fundamentals you all thought that would ensure there was good and accountable governance. Am I correct?
Yes, if that's what it says there. But on that issue, I've changed my mind.
Oh, you changed your mind. I was about to ask you that. Like, how do
For
you
very good reason.
go from having this as a fundamental in this organization for good and accountable governance, and then to, continue to support what is happening now? We are having a PM.
Well, it's very simple. The politicians that were available then to become prime ministers are not the politicians that we have available now. When I look across the opposition parties in the OECS, limiting a prime minister for 2 terms may well not be in the public interest. And I mean that with all sincerity. I mean,
When did your mind change about that?
So my follow on from that, sorry, Tanya.
Long ago.
My follow on from that, Tanya, is it really about the prime minister or the political party? I always bring up the case of Singapore. Singapore has had, everybody talks about Liang Yu and the miracle that he's done over there with the Singaporean economy. But the same political party has been in power for 78 years. Now, my question is it really about who is going to be the prime minister, or whether it is about the political cycle rotating? Because really, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. You could change the prime minister tomorrow in Dominica or in Antigua, but if the Labour Party in each of these jurisdictions stay in power, the same people who are upset will continue to be upset.
Okay.
So
let's take a call. Caller, you're live on the other side. Hello? Caller, you're live on the other side.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to the panel.
Good evening, good evening.
Hi, you're here.
To Mr. Kenny or Mr. Astafan, any one of them can answer this question. Kenny said that that Justin Byron report should be accepted by the people, and we should go ahead with that. I would like to ask him or Mr. Astafan, the report from the OS, the Commonwealth Civil Society. I would like them to explain to me what was wrong with those reports there that Justin Byron would do better. I would like them to answer that to me, please.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Kenny, you want me to go first?
No, of course. Go ahead. You're the expert.
The Electoral Commission itself, based on what had been communicated publicly by them, had accepted a number of the Commonwealth reports that were presented to them, some of which were reflected in the proposed amendments for 2018. All right. So I don't know what the big deal. I don't know what the big deal is. Civil society. I've read some of the papers put out by civil society, right? Dominica Civil Society on Electoral Reform, and a lot of it is premised on misinformation. I even had to go and take my own money to get Paramount Printers in Dominica to publish a small booklet for me on electoral reform, which I gave away free. They accepted the reform. What we have now is not just recommendations that are being made to the Electoral Commission. This is a consultation that's going to take place or has already taken place at least, well, not yet. Public consultations have not taken place. But my understanding is that Sir Dennis Byron has had meetings with the political leaders and civil society. And it's at a much higher level with a greater degree of authority, coming from somebody who has international respect throughout the world for his credibility and intellect and competence. So why not go with him?
You know, guys, this might sound like a real stupid question, but I have to ask. I find we stress all the time on someone who is experienced and they're international and their quality. I just wonder, does that mean because of their experience and how seasoned they are and how knowledgeable they are, does that mean they cannot be bought to do things that are not appropriate or not right? I'm just wondering, because I feel like
but
always
I mean,
talk like
let's be
because
frank. You're
somebody
talking
does that,
about
we
Sir
have to
Dennis.
accept, we have to go with something.
No, I think it's very shameful that you would make such a statement
Really?
against somebody like Sir Dennis Barry without the slightest basis to even make the
I did not
suggestion
make that statement
that
against
that is
him,
a possibility
I
with
am
him.
just making a statement in general because I hear a lot of times we use those things. Well, why should we question someone of such knowledge and experience, an expert?
Tanya,
Yeah, and I
No,
feel like
you don't question his integrity. You may
Tanya,
question his recommendation.
Tanya, I think if you're proxying what people say, and Tony, if I can help Tanya in that regard, if she's proxying what is being said, typically on this station, it doesn't make it any better. But if she's proxying that position, then the relevant answer is quite simple. So Dennis Byron's reputation is impeccable, and if he had a reputation that was tainted in any way, then this would taint the entire electoral reform bid, but it isn't. And that is part of the problem, because in trying to make aspersions or pass aspersions on his character, it prejudices the reaction to what the eventual report will be. But I mean, this man is considered the foremost jurist in the history of Caribbean judicial history. He was the president of the massacre in the tribunal that oversaw the massacre in Rwanda. I mean, this is not some guy who is known for taking stuff behind the scenes. So to somehow.
And Kenny, I think I understand that. I'm not trying to proxy anything that's said on this radio station, on any radio station, or said by anybody. It's just that's why I said that's how I started that question. It's a thought. Why
Tanya,
do we believe that individuals who are why can they not do bad things or be? Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
Can I jump in there, Tanya? If you want to go to a restaurant, you would ask people, how is the food there, based on the experience of people that have gone there. or anything we do, reputations matter. And if someone spent a life building a body of work, they're not going to throw away the reputation for one small drill. It defies logic. So I think, again, guys, it goes back to that fundamental point that I tried to make, that the opposition sees electoral reform as a tool for regime change. And if, in their estimation, it doesn't seem to guarantee a regime change, they're going to rubbish it. And that's the bottom line. And Dominicans at home and abroad, this is exactly what's happening. I think it's clear as night and day for everyone to see. And we can just move on, because we're not going to solve it to begin to rubbish someone with this level of integrity. My God, it just defies logic. They're not God, but again, they're not gonna fall for some silliness in Dominica. It's just unbelievable.
Let's take a call. Caller, you're live on the other side.
Good evening, Tanya. Thank God I got through, man. I just got like 2 questions I want to ask.
Okay, make it quick.
Tanya, number one, I must say good evening to your panel. Anthony, I want to ask him a question, Tanya, because honestly, right, no malice or nothing. I believe deep down in my heart, he knows he's not telling the truth. And I'll tell you why I say that, Tanya. For example, why did laws didn't pass in Parliament when he said they went to Parliament to pass the law and the people were violence outside the Parliament? It's because they wanted to make treating and bribery legal. And treating and bribery is illegal in Dominica, and Tony knows that. Now listen to this again. I want to ask Anthony whether or not, as a senior counselor, officer of the court, did he lie on the oath to the CCJ in that case with Ellen Scott and the West versus Skerritt and his administration? I asking you in public tonight, Anthony, did you or did you not lie on the oath to the CCJ?
All right.
As a senior counsel and as a member of the court.
Okay.
Tanya, I'm listening.
Thank you. You want to answer that, Mr. Astafan?
I mean, do I have to respond to every piece of rubbish?
No, you don't. I'm just asking. You can tell me.
How did I lie? I never asked the DPP to nolly-cross any matter. I, Tony Astafan, definitely not, absolutely zero, never before the judgment had come out. And I don't even think I have never even spoken to the DPP about it. And I certainly haven't written about it. I may have written a letter explaining why it could be done, but that would have been after the judgment. But at the time I made the statement to the CCJ, the suggestion about me asking the DPP to nolly-cross never arose, because frankly, I went into the CCJ thinking that I was going to win, but I got beaten by Cara Schilling.
I will answer that question simply. How you lied is the same way that I lie, is the same way that Kenny lies, is that when we say things that people don't agree with, they call it a lie. And it's just that simple.
Okay, let's take this one.
Don't use that as an excuse.
Oh, you come in there, you didn't wait for me, boy.
Some is a big man, some supposed to act like an adult. Stop your nonsense like it's little children you're talking about. Not because somebody...
But calm down, you're behaving like a child now. Come on. Tanya, let's move on.
Right. Okay, caller. All right, let's calm down, okay? Let's take another one. Caller, you're live on the other side. This line gives me a little problem. Let me take this other line. Caller, you're live on the other side.
Yes, good afternoon, Tanya.
Good afternoon.
Miss Tanya, can't you see that every time you're trying to ask a question on behalf of the people, Mr. King and the other man is cutting off? Miss Tanya, let me say that briefly. I'm not going to stay. A while ago, Mr. Astafan was responding to a question and Kenny cut it off. Mr. Astafan is the one. You haven't seen that email from Mr. Astafan when electoral reform was going to be done for the people of Dominica, and he stated that if that happened, that would take away the legacy of winning the election, or for them to win the election. Mr. Astafan cannot deny that. So when last week while they're talking about the guy saying, well, it won't change the mark. They are telling lies because they are passport sellers. They don't care what happened to a country. But we have to care.
Okay.
You understand?
Tanya, let me just make a...
Would you take questions from me to ask the Prime Minister, please? Can I ask questions? On your show?
Yes, you can, but you have to keep them short. And you had
Well,
your time.
week,
You listen
well,
next week. Hit me
next
up.
week I have a couple questions for you to ask
All
the Prime Minister
right.
for me because I cannot reach him.
Okay.
He doesn't answer my question.
All
Okay?
right. No problem. Go ahead, Mr. Astafan. You wanted to respond?
Yeah, I mean, quite apart from the fact that I don't understand this obsession with an email written in 209. And while I may have mentioned legacy of winning, Prime Minister Skerrit in 209 had only won, what, one election? 209 may have been the second. So it's in 209. Many years ago, we've passed that stage. Parliament tried to get it done in 2017. There was violence. I don't know what legalizing bribery meant. That was taken off for 2018. They went and got an injunction to stop it. We now have Sir Dennis Byron, and we are obsessing literally to the point of vomiting and losing our heads of an email in 2009 when we have a highly respected jurist preparing, listening to the people, listening to the political parties to give a report and recommendation.
You know, Mr.
Nobody is
Astafan,
saying, no, nobody is saying that they made recommendations and they were turned away. But they're
let's take this comment because this
obsessing
comment
about
actually
2009.
speaks to what you just said. Someone says, I'd like to add to that they're saying that we do not even yet have a single recommendation from the gentleman, and he's way overdue with these recommendations. So why are we being told that we must accept the recommendations without question? Problem is that we have been told by the man who runs things that he is going to take it straight to Parliament and hopes that we will not complain. Recommendations are supposed to be scrutinized by the Electoral Commission, which is tasked with electoral matters, are they not?
Well, let me just ask you, not only that, I would not advise Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit to get the recommendations and run to Parliament with it. He needs to study it. He needs to look at it. He needs to get legal advice from us. He needs to hear what the Commission has to say. I mean, and
But the main point being as well, we need to hear the
no, hold on. The
before
main
we can
point
accept
being
anything.
that COVID has caused the delay. No member of the Commission can deny that. The initial recommendations and suggestions were that there would have been live town hall meetings throughout the country. And because of COVID, it has dampened things down, but it's going to come. It has to come. And all we are saying, let me rephrase it differently so people don't lose their blood pressure. Right?
I find that's I was about to tell you that it's very interesting that you would say COVID has made delay when I find a lot of things have happened in terms of gathering wise during COVID. So I don't want to make COVID an excuse for that.
But you're talking about a commission that's going to be having. First of all, I'm not sure I approve of these gatherings and relaxations of the protocol. Me not believing
But for
that
them to
at
even
all.
happen, that means our government approve of it, right?
Right. Well, that doesn't mean I have to accept it, but it's a different situation with this. It has to be done carefully. It has to be done properly. There has to be full-fledged consultations. It takes time. And as Kenny says, whatever recommendations are made are going to live with us for a lifetime, and those which are accepted, hopefully by all sides, are going to govern elections for generations to come. So I don't see the impatience. Because when we had the opportunity of the first bite of the cherry in 2017, that went up in smoke. When we had a second chance in 2018, it was blocked by an injunction. So the focus should not always be on who is not causing the delays, but on who actually caused it.
The point that was made is not that the recommendation should be accepted by default. The point that is being made, that I've made, is that there should be intent from both political parties to come to an agreement on the recommendations in order to have electoral reform for the next election. That's it.
Let's take one more. You heard that, right, people? One more I'm going to take, and then I don't think we have any more time. So let's take this last call. Caller, you're live on the other side. Hello? Hello? All right, let's take another. Hello, you're live.
Hello, good night.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Yeah, I have something to add to this discussion. I'm an overseas Dominican. I reside overseas. In 2005, I voted in Dominica. I voted in 2009. I voted in 2014. And I voted in 2019. So there is a contention from the opposition about people who reside overseas coming down to vote. And the law states that if you are away for more than 5 years, you're not supposed to vote. But election in 2009 was held less than 5 years after the 2005 election. And election 2014 was held less than 5 years after the 2009 election. And election 2019 was held less than 5 years after the 2014 election.
Mm-hmm.
So in truth and indeed, I have not been away 5 years before the next election was held. So people who are voting every election, based on how elections are being called in Dominica, based on the dates from the last election, 5 years does not elapse.
Yes.
So we cannot be voting illegally.
That's in your situation,
I want to put out there.
Well, I want to know that's your situation as well. I think people were also highlighting different situations, persons being outside for more than 5 years and still receiving being registered to vote.
Yeah,
That's
but you know what?
highlighting.
You know why? But do you know why? In 2009, the High Court judge, Justice Errol Thomas, said there is no automatic disqualification under our law. For somebody to be removed from the electoral list would be away for more than 5 years, there has to be an objection, a hearing, a decision, an appeal. This is why I'm very happy I was given the opportunity to come to disabuse the minds of some about the complete fabrications taking place. A judge, the law of the land is that you can be overseas for more than 5 years and vote. The political parties have the obligation to object to you. And the judge says they have the right to vote, not scare it, not the commission, a high court judge in 2009, because the UWP's position was with Douglas Mendes, I think it was, that they should not have the right to vote.
What do you think? You think they should have the right to vote, Mr. Astafan?
But once you're on the list, you have the constitutional right to vote unless you're removed lawfully by way of
No,
an
but we're not
objection.
talking law now, because in my mind, and I think you would believe the same thing too, some laws need to be adjusted. Some laws sometimes need to change. But for you, your honest opinion, do you think they deserve the right to vote, living outside over 5 years?
A man should not be penalized for the laziness of an opposition party who doesn't want to go through the process of an objection.
Do you think they deserve the right to vote?
Somebody has on something here.
A man should not be penalized for the laziness of an opposition.
Does anybody have on their Facebook or anything?
Do you think they deserve the right to vote? Somebody has on something here.
I'm getting some very bad feedback. So if you guys have Facebook in the background running, please.
I'm not on Facebook.
Okay,
I have enough enemies on radio. I don't
or even the radio running on in the background.
No.
All right. Well, guys, it's 7:32. I think it was a very informative show. I feel like we could have I don't know. I don't want to jump out of myself and say a part 2 because I feel like we didn't touch on anything much. That is for Sam and Kenny to decide. All right. And for Mr. Astafan to decide as well. But it was a very informative show. And I'm glad we got to speak some more following from last week with electoral reform and understanding, senior council stance on that. You guys have any last words?
Yeah, Tony, thank you so much for coming. And again, we hear the you lie, but the majority of people that listen aren't the ones calling. And this is what we hear when Kenny and I walk the streets every day in Dominica, that people appreciate the information, and you gave, a lot of information. And thank you so much for sharing your information with the public tonight.
Kenny?
Yeah, the show was great. People are going to disagree with things that are being said. The main thing is that there has to be an understanding of the issues at hand. And as I said, we can't go through this every cycle. That's the reason we're here. You can't keep on going through this every cycle. And it seems to me that there are some people who prefer that people are agitated. And I would prefer that is not the case.
Mm-hmm. All right. Guys, thank you for joining us here on the other side. And we're going to see you guys next week, same time, same place, right here on the big station, Q95.
Thank you.
the offer out. I don't wanna chase you down, I know you see it. You run with me, and I can cut you free out of the treachery and walls you keep in. So trade that typical for something colorful. And if it's crazy, live a little crazy. You can play it sensible, a king of conventional, or you can risk it all and see. Don't you wanna get away from the same? Oh, pot you gotta play, cause I got what you need. So come with me and take the ride. It'll take you to the other side, cause you can do like you do, or you can do like me. Stay in the cage, or you finally take the key. Oh, damn, suddenly you're free to fly. It'll take you to the other side.
Okay, my friend, you wanna cut me in, but I hate to tell you, but it just won't happen. So thanks, but no, I think I'm good to go, cause I quite enjoy the life you say I'm trapped in. Now I admire you, and that will show you do. You're onto something, really it's something. I live among the swells, and we don't pick up peanut shells. I'll have to leave that up to you. Don't you know that I'm okay with this up-down part I get to play? Cause I got what I need, and I don't wanna take the ride. And I need to see the other side, so go and do like you do. I'm good to do like me. Ain't in a cage, so I don't need to take the key. Oh, damn, can't you see I'm doing fine? I don't need to see the other. Is this really how you